Listen to the word for mother in English, later, Latin, mater, Hindi, ma, Persian, madar, and German, Mutter. 5 languages separated by thousands of miles and years. These aren't coincidences. Their internal mechanics match, indicating they grew from the same ancient skeleton. Linguists call that common ancestor Proto-Indo-European. It was spoken somewhere on the Eurasian steppe roughly 6,000 years ago, but it predates writing entirely, leaving behind no physical records of its existence. To reconstruct a forgotten language from scratch, researchers couldn't rely on normal dialects that naturally mutate and drift over centuries. They had to find a linguistic time capsule that had been held perfectly still. In 1786, a British judge named Sir William Jones was stationed in Calcutta. He began studying Sanskrit, not for a practical reason, but because he found the language extraordinary. While translating, Jones observed a mathematical impossibility. Sanskrit's verb conjugations and core grammatical rules perfectly matched those of Latin and Greek. Languages borrow vocabulary all the time, but this was different. This was an exact match of the language's fundamental operating system, the deep structural bones of how it processed information. Jones realized all 3 must have descended from a common source that no longer exists. This single observation provided the framework for the entire field of modern comparative linguistics. To see how these ancient systems still shape your modern world, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments which language you speak at home. Because Sanskrit's architecture was deliberately frozen while other languages drifted, it provided a stable map for researchers to trace the ancestry of half the world's languages. Around 400 BCE, an Indian scholar named Panini achieved something unique. He operated more like an ancient systems architect than a simple linguist. He produced the Ashtadhyayi, a formal description of Sanskrit with nearly 4,000 algorithmic rules. These dictate phonology and syntax with such absolute rigor that modern computer scientists recognize it as a formal logic system. 20th century linguists essentially rediscovered what Panini built 2 millennia earlier. Most spoken languages naturally evolve and degrade, but Sanskrit was engineered to be perfected and refined, impervious to the natural drift of human speech. Panini didn't just document a language, he wrote a source code designed to artificially hold speech in a permanent, unmoving state. But even the most perfect rules fail if the people actually speaking the language naturally change their pronunciation over the centuries. To prevent this, Vedic priests developed a rigorous oral tradition. Sacred texts were memorized syllable by absolute syllable, rather than word by word. They used built-in error correction patterns. Priests recited syllables forwards, backwards, and in complex alternating sequences specifically designed to catch any deviation from the original sound. This acoustic verification guaranteed the original linguistic data survived completely uncorrupted for thousands of years. Working within this same intellectual tradition of logical precision, Indian mathematicians defined 0, not as a simple placeholder, but as a number with its own distinct mathematical properties. They also developed the decimal place value system. This provided the logical floor for modern arithmetic and, eventually, every piece of technology that depends on calculation. Sanskrit's prestige allowed it to spread across Southeast and Central Asia without ever deploying a military force. Its footprint is still visible in 12th century inscriptions in Cambodia and the scripts used in Thailand and Tibet. Neighboring civilizations adopted it voluntarily because it offered a vastly superior intellectual operating system for religion, law, and science. Latin died by transforming. As the Roman Empire fell, colloquial Latin slowly mutated into the modern Romance languages, like French, Spanish, and Italian. In India, everyday spoken languages called the Prakrits evolved in a similar way, eventually becoming modern Hindi, Bengali, and Punjabi. But Sanskrit refused to mutate. It deliberately stepped back from daily life, remaining perfectly preserved in ceremonial manuscripts, while the spoken languages evolved around it. It became a permanent anchor for civilization's highest knowledge, watching as the languages derived from it grew up and moved away. Today, fewer than 25,000 people speak Sanskrit as a first language, yet the systems it left behind are everywhere. It provided the logical framework for computer science, the basis for modern arithmetic, and the primary model used to understand the evolution of human language. Out of the 4 billion people speaking an Indo-European language today, every word they say, every calculation they perform, and every line of code they write relies on the invisible foundations built by Sanskrit.